Blake, you've got the advantage of a lot of energy and enthusiasm in the presentation. You've got a good dramatic statement that you use for your attention device. I think your thesis statement sets up 3 or 4 goals instead of a single one, and then when you're previewing the speech, it's not always consistent with, the points are not as consistent with each other. Why are they together in the same speech? As I'm listening to the speech, it actually ends up sounding very different from what I thought I was going to be getting in the thesis statement. So I think that's a little bit problematic. I did like the citation of the material. You were very consistent about doing that. The visual, which I can see pretty well from where I am, because it's right in front of me, it's not too bad, but it's still a little small. And as you probably are aware, you're trying to get too much out of the one thing. Probably everything there could have been put on a transparency that would have made it easier for people to see, and something pretty simple. You might have even spent less doing 2 or 3 transparencies than you did on the poster board and the tape and all the other stuff that you were doing there, and fixed that problem pretty easily. So the visual things, I think for the most part, are things that could be fixed. They're technical things that you need to work on if you're going to use visual materials in the future. I did think that the organization was just not as consistent as it sounded like it was going to be. At first, I thought we were going to be hearing about the life of Christ. You mentioned, from 0 to 33 AD, and we're going to get these. And then we didn't hear anything about that. We instead heard about the recording of the history, which I think is a good thesis. Let's talk about that, but make that the focus of what the speech is going to be. It ends up being kind of persuasive, an argument that this is, the text of the Bible, in particular the history of Luke, is historically accurate, and I think that there's a good argument to be made there. You want to phrase it a little bit differently so it doesn't come across as a persuasive. Give us the reasons why it's consistent. You mentioned at one point that there are 20 historical consistencies. I would have liked to have had a couple of examples of those. I got vague references to names of places, for instance, but that's about as specific as it got. Like I said before, there's lots of energy in the presentation. It did seem to me like when you got to the end, it was more about, well, I'm out of time, so I got to finish, as opposed to I'm at the end of the idea that I'm talking about, and now I'm done. And I think you need to have a little bit more control over the material. One of the problems here is, and this is an example, whenever people choose subjects that they're interested in, there's lots of stuff that they want to see or say in the presentation, and then they have a hard time kind of condensing it down and saying, this is where my focus is going to be. And I think that's the biggest problem here. It's not that you don't cite the information, you do, and it's not that you don't have an interesting topic, because you do, and your presentation is really solid, but I just don't think that it pulls together quite as well as it should. The visual that you had, I think, would have worked really well, like I said, in explaining the historical accuracy of what we were talking about. That, I think, maybe should have been the focus instead of some of the other things that come up. All right, thank you.